Good evening, members. Welcome to our Licence and Registration Committee on Monday, the 25th of March 2024. We will move to our first item, but first of all, I'd like to welcome our two new members to the committee. Mick Skills, who's previously been with us, and good to have him back, and Jeff Bray. Welcome. So we've got number one, apologies for absence.
Chair, we have received an apology from Councillor Thompson with no substitution.
Lovely. So we'll now move on to item 2, the minutes of the last meeting. Keith is just going to comment.
Yes, Chairman, I just perhaps just extending your welcome to the two new members. Perhaps it would be nice to just record our thanks to those councillors that have left the committee now. So Councillor Cots and Councillor Land for their contribution to the committee. But in relation to the minutes of the last meeting, they did cover the fees and charges to be levied going forward, and one of those is in respect of taxi and private hire licensing, for which there's a requirement for us to give public notice and consider any representations that are received. Just to confirm to councillors that there were no representations received, and so therefore the fees and charges that you approved at your last meeting are now in force.
Thank you. So we just need to confirm that these minutes are a correct record. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Bill Davidson, and a seconder, Councillor Adrian Smith. Thank you. Move on to number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any? Councillor Anne Wiggins.
Just to say that I hold a personal licence with tendering. Thank you.
And now Councillor Adrian Smith.
Just to let you know that I am a London taxi driver and I've got no ties in that capacity to the District of Dendry.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
Chairman, we received no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is the miscellaneous licensing subcommittee. We will formally receive a note. Do we have a proposal for those? Councillor Skills and Councillor Cousins. Thank you. We will now move on to item 6, which is the Premises Personal Licence Subcommittee. So if we can formally receive those, proposer, Councillor Cousins, and a seconder, Councillor Smith. Thank you. We will now move on to item 7. I'd just like to welcome, we have here with us tonight as well, Alfie Smith, who is our new Licensing Enforcement Officer. Welcome to you. So item 7 is the report of the Assistant Director of Governance, A1 Licensing Enforcement Schedule of Routine Licensing Inspections for 2023, which you'll find on pages 21 to 34. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just start off and then hand over to Michael, just to record with you that Alfie hasn't actually joined us yet. So please, members, just remember that we need him to join us. So when we finish the meeting, then I'm sure that you can welcome him and look forward to him joining the authority. The routine licensing inspections is in front of you. This was introduced for the first time last year, just to make sure that we were allocating licensing enforcement resource on a routine basis in the direction that the authority wanted to. So we're still relatively at an early stage in this process, and for 24-25 you will see very little, if no change at all, in the proposed allocation of that routine inspections. What we have set out is the number of licences that were in force last year and the number of inspections that were carried out in accordance with your decision last year, and the proposals, again, as I say, very much a mirror of where we were last year. We're at an early stage, but the intention of having this presented to you each year is to confirm to you that we do undertake routine inspections at the sort of frequency that we're indicating in here, and offering the opportunity in due course for you as a committee to shape and influence that. You can clearly tonight influence that, but I'm saying over time it will be through this report that you will indicate to us whether you want us to spend more resource in one or two particular areas of licensing, or less in those areas of licensing and more in other areas of a routine nature. So that's the purpose of it. Repeat again, for the sake of continuing to repeat it, a relatively early stage in this whole process. I don't know, Michael, do you want to say something more on that? No, is the answer to that question.
Thank you. Have any members got any questions at all that they'd like to ask on this one? I'll cheekily slip in first then, as while members are making their mind up. On page 25, it's got the cost of activity in support of carrying out the routine schedule will be met from the current service budget. Has the budget been cut at all, or is it still sort of at a steady amount? I wonder if. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may, just the budget for the service is primarily a staffing cost in this regard, and that hasn't been reduced. If anything, it will have increased for the pay awards that have been given. And so therefore, in real terms, the resource has remained broadly as it has been over the period of those 5 years. It is important to recognise that licensing is one of those areas of the council's functions that should seek to be cost neutral. So if the number of licenses were to grow and the resource allocated to routine inspections did not grow proportionately, then the overall cost to each licensee would technically reduce, and vice versa if the numbers start to decline. But in answer to your strict question, has the resource that is available for enforcement stayed or increased or decreased? It has broadly been static over that period of time.
Thank you, that's helpful to know. Councillor Jeff Bray.
Thanks, Chair. I thought I'd start early. Just so I'm quite new to the committee, so I'm probably going to ask some silly questions early on, but you'll get used to that. But just to clarify what the officer just said there, the pay award increase would not affect the number of hours, presumably, that are allocated to. So it would be fair to say that although there is a pay award increase, it's not going to increase the number of hours. So we've broadly got the same as we had before, rather than increase. So that's good. Okay, so I've got that right. Superb. We're off to a good start. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So we'll move to the recommendations. It's recommended that the committee is A, notes the details provided of routine licensing inspections carried out in the 2023/24 as set out in this report, and B, considers the need and frequency for routine inspections with a view to achieving compliance with licensing requirements within the remit of this committee, and if satisfied, endorse the schedule of such inspections as set out Appendix A to this report, and C, notes that the officers will then make arrangements within the available resource to implement the endorsed routine inspection arrangements in the 2024/25 and report on progress to this committee in time for it to inform considerations of a revised schedule for the 2025/26. Are we happy to move those recommendations en bloc? Yep, a proposer, Councillor Bray, seconded by Councillor Wiggins. So we'll now move on to item 8, which is the report of the Assistant Director of Governance, 8.2 Film Classification Policy, which you'll find on pages 35 to 48.
Thank you, Chair. Members may remember from previous committees that they've had to deal with some film classifications. In the UK, the classification body is generally the British Board of Film Classification. However, if they're not classified, then the applicant can come to the committee to ask them to determine the classification. At current, the council don't have a formal policy in place, although that we deal with them. So we're looking at actually putting a policy in place, and you'll find a draft policy from page 43 onwards. With the agreement of the committee, we're looking to send this document out for an 8-week public consultation and bring that back to the next committee. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Michael. Yeah, it's nice to see, obviously, already they've gone out to some organisations, the Electric Palace in Harwich and the Picturedrome in Clacton, which is really good to see. And I do know the Electric Palace have responded, which is nice, because if they're sort of looking at this draft and they're sort of saying they're happy and they're sort of pleased to share it, obviously it will then go out to a consultation. Any questions from members? No questions, so looks like we can move on to the recommendations. It's recommended that the committee approve for an 8-week public consultation for the draft policy for the film classification as attached to this report at Appendix A, and for the outcome of that consultation to be submitted to a future meeting of this committee. Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor Casey and Councillor Wiggins. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9, which is the date of the next meeting, which is likely to come forward with a date in July. So we'll wait for that one to come forward. Number 10 is the exclusion of press and public. This is due to them being exempt minutes. So we'll go into that. The committee is asked to consider passing the following resolutions: that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and the public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of agenda item 11 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of schedule 12A as amended of the Act. And B, under regulation 14 of the Licensing Act 2000